Good day, everyone. Welcome to our English class. Today, we are going to talk about analogy. So, are you ready to listen? Then let's begin. First, let's define analogy. It is a literary technique that involves comparison of how two things are alike, but with the ultimate goal of making a point about this comparison. Remember, the main function of analogy is not just to show, but also to explain or justify. Now, let's talk about the differences among analogy, simile, and metaphor. An analogy, as we said earlier, is a literary technique that involves comparison of how two things are alike. But the ultimate goal here is to make a point about this comparison. While a simile is a figure of speech comparing two unlike things that is often introduced by words like or as. Lastly, metaphor is also a figure of speech that is used to make an indirect comparison between two things that aren't alike but do have something in common. Now, what are the examples of analogy, simile, and metaphor? For analogy, life is just like a tree. It starts from a seedling that grows into a full-grown tree that has trunk and branches that make itself strong and bears wonderful fruits. As you see, life is compared to a tree and was justified through analogy. For simile, life is like a tree. Life is compared to a tree using the word like. And lastly, for metaphor, life is a tree. Now, let's discuss the two types of analogy commonly employed in writing. These are analogies that identify identical relationships and analogies that identify shared abstraction. First, we have analogies that identify identical relationships. This type of analogy takes the form A is to B as C is to D. It is often used to directly illustrate similar relationships between two pairs of words for the purpose of logical argument. Example, English is to language as mathematics is to arithmetic. Then we have analogies that identify shared abstraction. It compares two things or concepts that are technically unrelated in order to establish a connection between a characteristic that they share. Example, what soldiers do for the country, white blood cells do inside the body. Now that we know all about analogies, simile, and metaphor, let's try this activity. Get a piece of paper and let's start answering. I know you can do this. All you have to do is to identify if it is an analogy, simile, or metaphor. Are you ready? Let's do this. Number 1. Your skin is as white as snow. What do you think is the answer? Correct. It's a simile. Number 2. Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. The answer here is very good. It's an analogy. Lastly, Franklin has a heart of gold. What do you think is the answer here? Exactly, it's a metaphor. Congratulations, and thank you for watching and for listening. I will see you again. This is your Maestro Mela, always at your service.